Welcome back on the AM show. After the sports, yes, we're going to be focusing on, well, our national life, other aspects of our national life. And today we're hosting a man who has done many things, but I'll leave him to explain to us who exactly he is. He is a presidential candidate. At least he wants to be that going into election 2024. I don't know for certain because, of course, there are processes to go through with the Electoral Commission and everything. But he wants to be president. This morning, we're going to be probing him on why. Remember the last time I hosted Nana Kwame Bediako? Today, we're hosting Dr. Sam Ankrah, and he wants to be president. Good morning, Dr. Ankrah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Before I get into the meat of the matter, I'd like to find out from you. Who is Dr. Sam Ankrah? Who are you?
Dr. Sam Ankrah is just a humble young man who has been in the finance and economics business for a while. I worked as an investment banker and basically raising capital for corporations and for governments. I've also graduated from there as working on economic policies and advice to our country and basically advising corporations. So not to bore you with so many detailed stuff or being going outboard, in summary, this is who Sam Ankrah is in economic and finance business.
Okay, so economics and finance, and that's interesting because those are some of the areas where Ghana is hemorrhaging. And there's so much talk about the economy and the status of our finances. You've spoken about your experience in all of these fields. I'd like to find out from you, why do you want to become president of Ghana?
Very good question, and I suppose a lot of people have asked this question: why would you want to leave your lifestyle? Why would you want to get yourself into the frail of this?
In other words, why do you want to leave the peace? And
exactly.
Get into, as we say here, not violence, violence, because it comes with a lot of, that. Why do you want to forfeit your peace?
It's on different folds. Number one is a passion for people. They're just real passion and desire for people to uplift social mobility from where they are in their lifestyle and circumstances is what drives me. But more importantly, I also think the middle class, people, the skilled aspect of our community have failed this country because we've stayed in the fence and allowed certain things to go on, which I believe we could have gotten involved to help because of exactly what you just said. The violence and the aggressiveness of the nature of the political arena that we find ourselves in. But it gets to a point, or it gets to a time where somebody has to leave for something. A generation has to fight for the next generation. And I believe that is done on me at the stage to offer myself, put myself on the altar of sacrifice to make sure things are done properly so that we can create a path, we can create prosperity for all, and also leave a good legacy for the generations behind us.
You talk about putting yourself on the altar of sacrifice. As far as this Fourth Republican experience has been, I believe as a student of politics, among others, it is clearly the people who end up sacrificing for leaders all the time and not the other way around. You would see in other jurisdictions that leaders actually do sacrifice. Of course, they get the perks, they get certain benefits of leadership, but in the end, they are the ones who sacrifice their time. You would see that often. Look at Obama when he came to power, and within a short while, all his hair had gone gray. These people are not joking. There's a lot of work to be done. So you say you're putting yourself on the altar of sacrifice. That has not been the tale of the tape in our country, and I shudder to believe whether you would be able to change that.
Ben, honestly speaking, that is a narrative that we want to change. Politics has to benefit people. We're sick and tired of leaders taking advantage of the people, getting into government to prosper themselves and their immediate family at the expense of the entire nation. We're sick and tired of a system where people's loyalty are to political parties instead of a nation as a whole. So these are the basic things that are moving people like me to get involved into politics. I'm not a politician. In fact, I hated politics. But as I said to you earlier, I sit back, I have the passion for people, I have the know-how given the opportunity, so I don't see the reason why we can't get into the fray and help make the right things done. So, like you rightly said, those are the critical issues that needs to be changed. Being in leadership is service to a nation. It's not lording or ruling. It's service. You're serving the people. So it's a kind of service that we want to make sure that we bring back into our system where our political systems and governance structures work well for the benefit of the ordinary Ghanaian and not just a little few that gets the opportunity to run the country.
I see. And how are you going to implement such an agenda? It's good to speak about it. It's definitely laudable to talk about changing leadership, providing service leadership. You actually remind me of the Greek city-states and their philosophy of, if pun not intended, a philosopher king. In other words, a king, ruler, but who is also a philosopher, has depth of mind, is intellectual, okay? But in this instance, I ask you, it takes more than just one person. We have had leaders, even the likes of former President John Evans Atta Mills, that some felt was, morally speaking, probably the best we've had in quite a while, if for nothing, in this Fourth Republic. The people that surround such a leader are the crucial cogs that will determine how the wheel or where it rolls. So I'll put that question back to you again. Is this a one-man agenda? How can you execute this, especially considering, and I'll get to the bit about fielding parliamentary candidates. I don't know whether you're fielding any, but when there are talks about independent candidates, I often ask, should you get the nod, how will you govern this country?
Right. I mean, it starts from the point, first of all, let us diffuse the mindset where we think it cannot be done.
No, it's not about it cannot be done. It's about how will it be done.
It will be done, and it can be done, and we need to have that confidence. That is a hope I'm bringing to my fellow Ghanaians, that there's a possibility and a way an independent candidate can run this country. Yes, we're going to field independent candidates across. However, worst case scenario, if we don't get the numbers that we're looking for, the Constitution is very clear. It says that you have to, it appoint ministers from Parliament. It didn't say you have to appoint your ministers. So we're going to use NDC, MPP, CPP, every party representative in Parliament to run this country. The motion is here is that we're building a country devoid of political colors and symbols. We want to use right Ghanaians with the right skills to develop and build this nation. The systems that we have become dysfunctional. It's broken. It requires some sort of skills to break it down and rebuild. Let me give you a scenario. It's like you have a house with a dysfunction where you know the house within a certain period is going to break down. It's going to break down and collapse. Would you want to keep putting cosmetic stuff there just to keep it going, or you want to break it down totally and rebuild again? It's that kind of rebuild that we are calling for Ghana. We've realized that if we continue going where we are going now, it will get to a point where we will not even have a country. So I am making a clarion call to Ghanaians. I'm making a clarion call to all right-thinking Ghanaians that, look, the systems and structures that we have at this point would not take us to where we want to be as a nation. It requires breaking it down and putting in structures that will stand the test of time and for generations to come. It's the systems that will help us to build prosperity and not to build a little cabal for people that gets into governance. So it's a comprehensive exercise we are calling to do, and it doesn't require one person. We have a solid team. People under normal circumstances who wouldn't want to be even in politics are looking to say, if this opportunity is created, they are happy to throw their hats in the ring and support us to build this nation. This is what we require as a country, where all our experts, all our resources are put on the frail to help build a nation for all to benefit.
I'll go back to that bit you said about, yes, you are mandated to elect ministers from Parliament. Not all of them.
Yeah, certain percentage.
There's a quota, there's a percentage. And so what happens to the rest? And what if, you see, the point is, you can even stick to those frameworks, if you like. These parties will not necessarily work in your favor, and that's another thing. You know, people have said, and there's political history is replete with examples. If you remember, at the initial stages of the Professor Atta Mills election, right, in 2008, in the first part, before the runoff, he had actually lost the presidential election by
a margin.
Then it was realized by the people that the NDC had won the majority in Parliament, which meant, technically, that they would frustrate the MPP if their presidential candidate, then Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, got the nod. And so later, the Tyne constituency became the deciding factor, the kingmaker, if you like. And that was how the election swung. And I say this because back then you would interact with people and they would say, nah, once they have the majority, no, it's not going to work. And you can just imagine, even in this instance, for example, the NDC, if they had got the majority versus the MPP now, look at what a struggle it has been for the MPP in governance. So I really don't, how are you going to be able to marshal those forces?
Honestly, that is what the country needs. I think the decision or the idea at the time that if NPP had won and they wouldn't have had a majority in Parliament, and as a result they should put NDC through, was a wrong notion. At the moment we're having challenges where the president has too much power. Most of the corruption that we're facing at the moment, which is a canker eaten into our society, which has impeding upward mobility and exacerbating income inequalities and all of the mess, the country not being affordable, is because of corruption. People are having monies they haven't really worked for in their hands. And basically when that happens, the whole economy gets into shambles. And we'll talk about how severe corruption has gotten into our economy and is affecting us. So we need to have separation of powers and checks and balances. That was a natural one in the bidding. Clearly, if our votes had landed MDC to take over majority and MPP in Parliament as a legislature and MPP to be the executive, I think that was a very good idea and that was a very good plan. As to why people thought that wasn't good and they had to give the power back to the NDC or MPP was wrong. We need to separate powers. We need to have checks and balances. These are very good for our first building our democracy and also for our economy. We need to check on each other. If you don't have these sort of checks and balances, separation of powers in place, this is what leads to corruption, as I said earlier. So the idea that NPP needed to have majority in Parliament for them to vote for them and so forth, it's neither here nor there. And I don't think what thinking that went into. But clearly, it was the best thing for the country at the time. What we're going through now is one of the best experiences where an executive cannot just bring policies or bring a budget and expect a rubber stamp in Parliament. You expect people to scrutinize you. You expect people to look through these documents and make sure that things are done properly. And that is exactly what is going on. So I think that notion, whether we have majority in Parliament or not, it's not really the case. It's about having efficient government systems. It's having transformative leadership that would take over and bring the right policies that would change the destiny of the nation. It's not really about the structures of who is in charge or who is not there. Talking about they're going to give us problems in Parliament. We're building a people's government. If we bring policies, if we bring programs that would change the destinies of our people, and somebody sits in Parliament and frustrated because he's a member of a certain party, he doesn't want the government to succeed, we're coming back right at your yard, calling for town hall meetings in your community and telling your locals exactly what this policy is going to affect their lifestyle. And if you are not careful, you're sitting there, they're voting against you the next time because they know you are not helping them. So it's going to be a people's government.
It's going to take 4 years for that to happen, for them to go back to the ballot, for people to not vote for them. In the interim, those 4 years, you would have to do work. You would practically be walking a bit, pardon my, naked. They wouldn't cooperate with you. Everything would come to a standstill. You know how crucial Parliament is in all of this. The executive is powerful because we've made it that way. And I'll come to you shortly on some other constitutional points. But with Parliament frustrating your work, government business, your hands would practically be tied. You'll be forced to do things you probably don't want to do.
Well, I believe everybody that goes into Parliament, and to be honest, let's give credit. The politicians currently in the helms of affairs want to do the right things. However, wanting to do the right things and doing the right things are different. So the fact that at the moment they are going ahead on what they are doing is because of their chief whips whipping them, because policies are coming from executive which necessarily they are happy with, but they can't really vote against because they are more loyal to their party before the country. So once you have a government that is neutral from them and initiating the right policies, that part is sorted. They will find it very difficult to sit in there and stop or block policies that will change the destiny of this nation.
I honestly beg to differ. It goes back to the point about the absence of war not necessarily being peace. People think once war is absent, it means peace. The mere fact that either one of these parties may not be in power, but they want to consolidate whatever they've gained in Parliament, among others. I mean, we've seen areas where some people have had cause to believe that even when it suits them, they band together, even as what's the word, polarized as they may be on different matters. When it suits them, they band together. I mean, it will be very easy for these two political parties to band together when it's their interest against, someone who is working against what they feel is their interest.
Well, I mean, again, we're speculating here, and it's not the actual...
No, things have happened in the past that have pointed in that direction.
The reason why this has happened in the past is because we have two protagonists, two main political parties who think it has to be us or theirs. But when they realize the Ghanaians have become very more discerning, and they don't want any of these two parties in power because of what they have done, and as such voted for a neutral leader to take over, I think the awareness would come and say, hey guys, let's sit up and do the right things, because if we don't, people are watching us, and that is why an independent party with not many parliamentarians have taken over the country, and if we don't take care, all of us, our parties are going to go down. So that at that point, it becomes a matter of how do we sustain our political parties and making sure they follow the right processes and help us to implement our program, which we want to use to turn around the country. We can't continue like this as a country. We need to be serious as people and start implementing programs and policies that will change our country. We can't just leave and one party takes over a cabal, just themselves and few others enrich themselves, they leave, the other one takes over, and Ghanaians are getting poorer and poorer by the day. Look, this can't continue, and our people are getting discerning by the day. I've been around the country, I've been going around to the very remote parts of the nation, and people are complaining because politics have not changed their lifestyle. Politics for the last 30 years have not brought anything different from how they were living before. Is that how we want to continue as a nation? We can't continue like that. So if Ghanaians at this point feels an independent candidate is the right person to lead the nation, and they give that person the permission and the authority to do so, I suppose everybody is going to be whipped online to do the right thing.
You speak about differences, so the differentiator. I'm going to put it to you. I mean, there are the likes of, in the past, we've had the Kofi Kurantings, we've had the Marek Kofi Gans, we've had so many people. Currently, there's Alan Tremanting, who has started his movement, and we know of many other people, Nana Kwame Bediako, among others. My question to you is, what makes you stand out? What makes you think you're better than all of these people, better suited to lead Ghana? What makes you stand out?
Our country is in a mess, economic mess. It requires skillful hands to straighten things up, and with a will to do so.
You've never been president before. You've
mentioned guys, names previously, and who had tried, but we've never gotten to this time in our economy. Our country has never been like this before. The time is now for us to bring skillful hands, people with the know-how of exactly what the problem is, to get involved and resolve the situation. As I said earlier, the idea of political parties and popularities and so forth would not solve our problems if we don't start bringing practical people in the equation. So I am saying the time is now. Years ago, what might have worked is not working now. When Ghana was bidding for independence, it hadn't happened in the history of our country before. No country in Africa had independence. But
Sub-Saharan
Africa, sorry. But with determination, hard work, and perseverance, they were able to secure that. The same thing falls on us now. And again, I'm making a clarion call to all our people out there that we've gotten into a time in our history that will require a second independence. Second, economic recovery, where we can set up structures and systems that would work, because our current systems, although might have worked before, has become dysfunctional. It's not working anymore, and we need to change it. We can't continue the cosmetic work, and it starts from our voting. Vote for an independent candidate, Sam Ankrah. Let's get involved. Let's take over the helms of affairs, break down the system, rebuild the system with a rule of law, with sound economic policies, continuous fight against corruption, and bring stability into the country.
Tell me, your campaign has been launched, right?
Yes, the campaign has been. We've started.
Because I know in November last year.
Yes, we've postponed the date for the grand rally to open the campaign. But yes, we've started. We're campaigning. But we're hopefully on the 14th of February we're targeting to have the outdooring of the launch, a big rally where we will outdoor our people, we will outdoor our detailed policy, radical policies that are going to turn this country around for Ghanaians to see this. This is a real alternative. When we come out, when Ghanaians see the holistic view of what we intend to bring, people are going to sit back and take us serious.
All right. Tell me, what do you have? Is it a movement? Is it a political party? What is it? And what do you call it?
It's a movement. We're Alternative for Action Movement, AFA.
Alternative for Action Movement.
Yeah, so it's AFA. We're a movement. We're not a political party. Anybody can join and be a member. Whether MPP, NDC, CPP, GCPP, everyone can join and help us for once and for all end this status quo and bring in a system that would help build our nation.
Are you going to retain this up to election 2024? Basically, what I'm asking you is, have you had interactions with the Electoral Commission? You know, eventually you must go through that process. I don't know, with all these movements springing up, because when you look at the letter of the Constitution, it talks about political parties. I don't know how this will end up for all the movements that are springing up. But do you have any plans of making this alternative action movement a political party? Have you engaged the Electoral Commission?
Honestly speaking, with the philosophy that we're pushing, we don't intend to ever be a political party. Ghanaians don't need another political party. They are looking for selfless, transformative leadership. And that is what we're bringing on the table. It's not about the colors. It's not about the symbols. Right now, you've heard people talking about bringing tribalism into politics and saying this region is for this part of the people. Look, we need people that would build Ghana. We don't care where they're coming from, whether they're green or white or yellow. We want people that would come and put policies and be firm on it. Political will that can change our destiny. We're sick and tired of all these cabals and these favoritisms and lack of meritocracy in the society and all these things that had helped corrupted and brought our country to its knees. We need to change it, and that requires a movement like ours, devoid of all these colors and symbols or affiliations or whatever, to change the country and turn the country around.
I'm just concerned, though, about the script. What the Electoral Commission works with is the law, as much as possible. And our Constitution talks about political parties. There's no talk about movements. So I'm just asking you, based on the letter of the Constitution, and I'm asking this also because you do know that prior to every election, a number of political parties or entities or candidates are not allowed to compete on certain grounds. So I'm asking you whether you've taken a look at all of these dimensions and where you sit now, you feel comfortable enough. Political parties are required to have offices in every region, offices in the districts, among others. If you claim you're a movement, I don't know how that applies to you. I don't know how you're going to be on the ballot. I'm just asking whether your team has looked into some of these.
We've done extensive research before even I decided to contest or put my head on the ring to do this work. First of all, we're not going into the election as a movement. Okay. We're going into an election as an independent candidate, Sam Ankrah, with the support of his people in the various constituencies.
Okay. Do you have offices in the districts?
For an independent candidate, I don't necessarily have to have offices in the district. However, we want to make sure we run and operate and have efficiency on the grassroots. So we're building offices across every polling station to the top.
Do you have offices in the regions?
Yes, absolutely. We're building, as I said, that's part of our campaign strategy to make sure that we have presence from every polling station.
Okay, so you are up to a certain point. I don't know when, but tell me, by what time will you have offices in all the regions?
By the end of this quarter, we should be everywhere.
All right, so by end of April?
Absolutely. Once we outdoor our what do you call it, campaign, and we showcase our talents that we're going to bring on this country and our policies, it will go hand in hand concurrently with showcasing our offices and our with grassroots operations.
Running a political campaign in Ghana is very cost intensive. One billboard can cost you a ton of money. How are you funding your campaign?
It's a people party, it's a people government. If Ghanaians really want this change that they are looking for, if the profession of change and the noise in the streets is anything to go by, then I'm respectfully asking people to put money where their mouth is. It's going to be grassroots contribution for everybody. Your city, your 5 cities, your 10 cities. My money that we put in is what is going to run this campaign. We're not going to be run by any interest group. Let's get that noted. We don't care who they are and how big size of money they would bring on the table. For the purposes of what we are doing, making sure that we are creating an economy for Ghanaians and certain things that are going on which are not right, we forbid from taking any money from any interest group. It's going to be our campaign, Ghanaians' campaign, his money, your money, 5 cities, students, 10 cities, 2 cities. It's what is going to move this campaign for us to win the elections.
So far, based on what sorts of funding have you used to roll the campaign so far? So far, you've not had that. You've had a bit of a launch, but not the proper outdooring, which you're doing later this year. So how have you been funding your activities? It's
been done self-funded. Like I said, I have put most of my money into it so far. And basically, as I said, going forward, we have a strategy to do crowdfunding, to do fundraising across the nation. Once our message goes out to our people and they understand exactly what we intend to do, people won't have a stake in that kind of government that would come and turn their destinies around.
All right. So here's a script that I see many candidates, especially those wanting to go independent, reading from. You can differ but I've interacted with a number of them, and all of them come and say, oh, we're going to do crowdfunding. We're going to come to you for 1 city, 5 cities, or whatever you can contribute. There's a limited pool of Ghanaians. That's one. And these are harsh economic times. I'm wondering whether all of you are reaching out to different pools of Ghanaians. There's only one set of Ghanaians. There's only one set of Ghanaians who will vote a certain limited millions in terms of number. So tell me, again, how exactly you mean to roll this. And I'm tying it to 2 things. One, our constitution talks about political party financing and certain strict rules and regulations, which we know some parties are not going by. I don't want to mention names, but they are not going essentially by them. That in itself borders on criminality. The second bit is, it's been said in some research pieces that to become president in this country, you require as much as $100+ million.
Yeah.
Staggering, startling, mind-blowing. Do you think you can amass $100 million to roll a campaign against the juggernauts of the MPP and the NDC, especially as an independent candidate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't mention to you, I'm an investment banker, or I worked as an investment banker. The main objective of an investment banker is raising funding for a right cause. If we have the right cause, which we do, if we have the right message, which we do, we will find the money to support that to make it happen.
How? Crowdfunding?
Absolutely. Like I said, speaking to the right people about the right programs, because look, Ghanaians are tired. So if we cannot amass that money to run our campaign, then we can't run the nation. If we're looking to have at least 7 million votes to win the election, we should be able to tax this civilian mode to put their stake into what they believe in to get us to win these elections.
I see. So as far as you're concerned, you can raise $100 million.
Absolutely. What else wouldn't have even started in the first place? I'm sitting here spending some very, very valuable times doing what I'm doing rather than being out work chasing for money. Clearly, it should tell you that the guy is serious and he knows what he's about. We know exactly what we're doing, and we're certain that we would raise the money and push and win these elections, God willing.
I see. Let's look at different aspects of our national life and how you mean to impact. I'm sure people want to hear you speak on different aspects. I'm talking about the economy, agriculture, health, infrastructure, roads. So let's start with the economy. You know exactly where we find ourselves.
Absolutely.
We have a program which the IMF is helping us execute. On the back of that program, we've suffered different, I don't want to call them consequences, but you've seen the rollover of taxes nowadays. Now, the latest we've seen, electricity tariffs, even for residential users, are going to be impacted by value-added tax. That's already, quite a bit because businesses and residential users are already complaining about high utility tariffs. That's one. Inflation is where it is. Year on year is going down, month on month is going up, heading north. The cost of living is very high. You would have interactions with government functionaries and they will tell you that, the CD is relatively stable. The highest it hit was around 16 plus against the dollar. Now we are looking at 12 plus. It's stable, but it's still very high. So when you look at the metrics, on the macro level, we have made some minimal gains. On the micro level, people are still feeling the pinch, okay? What are you going to do differently in the midst of an IMF program for the people of Ghana?
Excellent. Look, I did mention to you that our systems need to be broken down and rebuilt, especially our economic systems. We need to create economic models that speaks to our Ghanaian experiences. The structures that we have mostly is colonial inherited, and nothing has been done about it. Let's stop making noise. Let's stop the cosmetic work and address the issue head on. If you have a government of this size, and you look at your revenue, and you still maintain that, that is what is going to cause you to increase taxes and find avenues where you're not supposed to raise money. Look, we can't continue with this size of government. UK, as huge as it is, with their GDP as massive as it is, has only 350,000 government workers, a population of about 65 million. Ghana, only 31 million. Yet we have over 1 million government employees, and we keep piling on. How can we sustain that? Government size needs to be cut. What else? Have they stopped using the Land Cruisers, the gas-orbing Land Cruisers across the nation where every department and whatever gets all these
agency
and so forth?
Office of the President.
Cuts the waste. Look, we need to cut costs. There's a basic say, not even in economics, in a regular life, we call it or social economic, that you need to spend what you have. We don't spend what we are having. We're continuously borrowing to come and pay recurrent expenditure, and we're expected to get out of these doldrums. No, we can't. Somebody needs to tell us in our face. So I said the policies and programs that we're bringing, as radical as it may be, is going to cause a bit of difficulty. It's not going to be rosary for everyone, but we need to take these harsh decisions now, or else it will come back and haunt us. As the earlier we take it, the better. The issue with a case study with Germany after the Second World War, where they came back together as a country and rebuilt their economy. And now look at Germany. Japan, after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, coming back together to rebuild their economy. Ghana is more or less at the same position. We need to take the radical decisions. Cut government size as much as possible, 50% I propose. Build the private sector, create do you know how much money that saving can do for the nation in terms of building infrastructure, healthcare, agriculture, education? Look, we need to take the radical decisions, and that is one of them. Talking about stability, we don't have an economy. Anything happens outside, the country is in trouble. Ukraine war, we are complaining. We have problems with the shipping companies or containers. It affects us because we are importing everything, even toothpicks. Why are we not creating local economy? How should a country like Ghana, with such arable lands around us and great talent and unemployed youth, should be importing toothpicks and intestines for goats and cows and so forth?
Are you then in support of the imports bill that was being planned, which said that would just cut off all of these and try and, adopt
Yeah,
homegrown policies? Are you for that?
Absolutely. We will restructure it and frame in a better way, because we have to use fiscal policies to change the behavioral patterns of our people, even including our consumption patterns. We need to change these things. So yes, I'm in favor of it, but it has to be in a holistic way where Ghanaians would benefit from it.
But you're also aware, and I have to interject, for those of you who watch sometimes and feel I interject at certain points, is because I don't want anything to be swept under the carpet. You do realize as well that per the bill that went before Parliament, it gave overweening powers to the Minister for Trade and Industry. He would determine a certain number of things. People felt it was a recipe for corruption disaster.
Absolutely.
And two, the whole thing about we're letting go, and when your production is, let's say, 2 and your consumption is 10, and you say you're letting go, how do you fill the gap? It doesn't happen automatically. So are you subscribing to the model as proposed by the minister, or you have a different model?
We have a different model. Obviously, anything that has to go through a human channel model, a body to determine who imports, is clearly going to be tantamount to corruption. What we are saying is already we know the importers are importing these things. So if we're saying from next year, 2025 to 2026, we want 50% imports. That means everyone in the industry will still have to import, but they have to reduce the amount of importation.
Right.
And basically, and we are looking to help local. So then the next year, 2026 to 2027, we say 70%. We'll carry on to a point where we can phase out completely and there's no imports coming into the country. So that is what we intend to do, supporting homegrown policies, making sure that we develop homegrown agricultural policies, go on serious mechanized farming to feed our people and to feed our neighbors as well. And again, with the currency fluctuation, I started talking about this way before one Prof. Hayes got involved. Japan did it, China did it, UAE done it. We need to peg our currency to bring stability to the market for a period. It gives a psychological view to people. If you sit in here, Ben, and you know that your $10 is worth $10 5 years later, you would not be rushing to go into the forest or the black market to save money in dollars and so forth. So I have been proposing that for us to gain stability in the economic situation and also control the inflation, because a lot of the currency fluctuation brings a lot of inflation, which we're going to talk about later. Let's peg our currency for a period and bring stability to the market so that at least you know that the pen that I'm buying is 5 cedis. 10 years later, or 5 years later, I'm still paying the same amount of money. So I'm talking about pegging here, and we can go into details exactly how that can be done. And we talked about creating employment for our young people. Again, the amount of young people that comes out on a yearly basis, even talking about those from the education system alone, is unbelievable, over hundreds of thousands of them. And yet there are no avenues. If you talk about those who are not in employment, not in education, and not in any sort of training, again, that's over 1 million people. How are we going to sustain that? Create apprenticeship. Have a proper policy that makes sure that you feed these guys as a real working job, not just put them into camps and say, I'll put you into 6 months program, a NACOP or YouTube, you have to go out there and fend for yourself. That is not it. Give them real skill, real tool. And I'm talking about apprenticeship where you are a quantity surveyor. I put about 15 young people to work under you for a period of, say, 5 years, depending on how quick they learn. And then the government pay salaries of these young men understudying you. When they finish, they also open their outlets. And you realize that it mutates. It creates real employment, hand-on employment. So these are the sort of innovations and creativity that we're going to bring on board.
Just so we can make tracks. Quick one, though. You mentioned the number of people that government employs and all of that. How many ministers do you think you can work with?
20.
20 ministers.
Listen, Norway, with a GDP of over 600 billion, has 17 ministers. Netherlands, GDP of 570 billion.
Are these ministers who will double as regional ministers or something?
We're not going to use regional ministers. There will be one government in charge of local government and rural development. That minister will take care of all the DCEs DCEs will be elected. So we're going to decentralize government, make sure that politics is felt at the grassroots. DCEs are elected and they report.
Yeah, but in the interim, before you get DCEs or MCEs elected, there will be a gap. How will you fill that gap?
Well, I mean,
because when you come, these are policy proposals. And you see, we've gone down this road before.
Absolutely.
And government had to back down. So in the interim, how are you going to run the districts?
It's, like I said, all these things have to be phased out. Like any other project where a new project comes to phase out the existing one, there has to be a plan and a program and a timelines. So we are going to bring outdoor that program that would gradually phase out the existing one and implement, we believe, from our structures, after the first year or so, we should be able to implement and execute exactly what we're looking to do as a government.
How do you mean to tame the monster of corruption?
That's a big elephant in the room. But corruption can be tamed. Checks and balances, separation of powers, like I said earlier.
We have them. We have them already.
We don't.
They are not working.
We don't. If you have the president appointing the chief justice, if you have the president appointing the, the IGP, the president appointing everybody, you don't tell me you have appointing parliamentarians to be ministers. You're not telling me you have checks and balances.
He is doing that, and for now it's all been he's, but he is doing that based on the Constitution. That's what the Constitution mandates.
Absolutely. So we'll come back to that. But before we change the Constitution, there has to be selflessness in our leadership to give power and room to various institutions to function on their own, and which we don't have now. But the Constitution will come to it, but we need to...
Let's go to it, because time is limited, yeah. But let's go to it. What will you do with the Constitution?
It needs to be reviewed.
It needs to be reviewed.
A lot needs to change.
Have you read the contents of the 2010 Constitutional Review Commission's work? Have you read it?
I haven't read it into detail, but I have a fair idea exactly what they're proposing.
Do you subscribe to some of those changes?
I subscribe to most of them.
Like which ones?
Like talking about separating the president from electing the chief justices, what I just said. Article 71.
Office holders.
Office holders being scrapped, because again, single spine for other people, Article 71, that's the first form of discrimination anyway, which you can talk about. So all those ones I think is very important. I think the Council of State needs to be scrapped.
Council of State ought to be scrapped.
Yep, they have to have a second chamber where we put ex-professionals, ex-IGPs, ex-military commanders, paramount chiefs and so forth to be there to make decisions and advising government. So there's a lot that we need to review as far as the Constitution is concerned. And I think we've started by having these lectures, but you need to move from the drawing board into action. And this is what we bring on the table as a government.
Let's talk about agriculture. You've already spoken about mechanizing agriculture and all of that. Easier said than done. You go to other parts of the world, Brazil and other places, the US, mechanized agriculture is the way to go. If you look at the population involved in agriculture versus what they produce, the quotient of it, and what it brings to America's GDP, you would see that we're practically joking. How are you going to implement that? We've had planting for food and jobs, rearing for food and jobs. It's amounted to nothing.
Let's move from the slogans to real action. What is the challenge here? We have issues with land tenure assessment, land ownerships. Government needs to solve that problem. There has to be deliberate policies to create enabling environment for private sector to drive this industry. We can't do everything as a government. All the government requires is to be able to create the enabling environment. If there are land tenure issues, if there are land ownership issues, today this guy owns it, after 6 months a ruling is given to another person, and that doesn't give comfort to investors, government to take responsibility on that. Secondly, another problem, financing, funding. How do we get funding? We're not attracting funding from local banks because banks are comfortable buying government treasury bills, and because government is borrowing and giving them trusted or guaranteed interest, so they're comfortable going in there. How do you resolve that? Government needs to stop competing with the private sector. External borrowing. Any external interest into the market would make sure that there's technology. Do we have the technology? No. Who has the technology? Israel. So you go to Israel, speak to the experts, let them partner with locals, and then immediately you have access to funding that can move into the mechanized farming. So
but you do know that, especially in terms of agriculture, I do not know how much of this you're aware of, but Ghana has partnered Israel for a long time on tech and especially agriculture. We have people who go study there. Are you aware of that?
Yes, but going to study there...
I'm just citing that as an example. There's more that goes on.
There's a different level I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people or business people in Israel seeing the potential in the investing their technology with locals here. At the moment, it's government and sponsorship relationship. We need to move from there to private sector driven, where the components that attract investors to come into the country are there. So they see that if I bring my technology to join A, who has 15 acres of land, I have access to X amount of money to grow my maize or rice. These are the sort of things I'm talking about. Practical things, not just these theoretical aspect or written contrast relationship that has not yield anything. Let's move into the grants of it. Let's get the real action being taken. Somebody has to sit in Israel and say, wow, I have, like what they did in Zimbabwe and elsewhere. The farmers have to sit there and say, look, the opportunity is there. Let me go for it. It's not like government going to lure them or convince anybody, but we put the various components that attract people regardless of where they are to bring their technology to match up with the local expertise and get foreign funding to be able to move it to mechanized farming. I have a whole blueprint of that would be given into detail on our during of our policies.
Tell me, there's the scourge of galamsey. It's destroying our natural resources, land resources, water resources, among others. I want to brief focus on the natural resources of Ghana. You can start from galamsey, but I also want you to share with us, how are you going to basically weaponize the things that we have in the interest of Ghana? We have gold. It's not serving our purpose. In fact, sometimes you will see that we are claiming we've exported X amount of gold in a year. Other entities across the world tell us that actually you've sent more to other places. We don't know what happens with those. Now we've had oil, now there's lithium. What is your projection on these matters? Okay,
so let me talk about galamsey. The situation in galamsey is very pathetic as to why a nation like ours can't solve a problem endemic as this is serious. Look, if we destroy our water bodies, we cannot afford not to have water in our country. But we still can't solve this problem. Are we saying that if we get attacked by a neighbor, we cannot resolve the issue? Clearly, this is what we are saying. We have people in government who are doing this and at the same time saying they are solving the problem. Let's address the issue head on and make sure that the truth is laid on the table. The issue with galamsey has to do with leadership. Our leadership needs to be up and doing and end this and end it. Because we can't just keep talking about we have galamsey and it's not been. Look, the reason why it's going on is because our leadership are not that serious to address it, or they are not really holding the, hitting the nail while supposed to.
Which do you think it is?
I think it's people in government that are doing it. Parliamentarians, ministers, people who are supporting parties are having that as and this is what goes back to what I was saying, that when people's loyalty is to a political party as to a nation, these are the challenges that you face. And our system of governance that we're bringing in will naturally take care of this. But I'm hoping, and I'm saying to our government, that solving that galamsey issue falls right at their doorstep. They have no excuse to give than to hit the nail where it's supposed to be and go out there and solve the problem, because they know exactly who are involved in mining around these water bodies. Now, talking about our natural resources. Again, if you remember, I made a statement earlier that our system of governance, our structure of economy, everything is based on a colonial model which has been restructured. As to why we're sitting here 2003, 2004, and we are taking 2024, yeah. We're taking royalties in our minerals. It's where they are so creative, innovative way of raising money to do it on our own. It's unbelievable.
Share some of those with us.
What I'm saying is, when I get the opportunity, every mineral, every find would be 100% owned by Ghana. 100%, not 10%, not 50%.
How are you going to execute that? Especially when you're considering that a lot of the time why we lose these gargantuan sums of money has to do with the fact that when it comes to exploration, when it comes to funding the project from ground up, we don't have the resources. So we let these companies come in with high risk. And of course, high risk comes with high gain. And that is why we keep being on the losing end. You don't have the money. How are you going to work it out?
We don't have the money, but we have the assets. So you set up a wholly owned asset company. Then you have the, operating company. The operating company will be paid a fee. And the fee would be the experts that would bring in their technology, the experts that would bring in their funding, and they put into that port from day one. You become, for instance, in an oil, day one, you become the ExxonMobil. Let me tell you, The Chevrons, the ExxonMobil, the Shells, the guys that you see around are not necessarily working 24/7 for them. They are working on contracts. Today you see them in a Chevron jacket. Tomorrow they are wearing ExxonMobil's jacket because they've gotten the contract. We can do the same. So once the investor sees you have high-skilled labor, the experts are on the table, similar to what I was talking to you about the mechanized farming, you attract the funding. So the EXCO, the production company or the operating company is where these guys come and farm in. And then you pay them a fee. A similar concept was done in Norway after the Second World War when they found the oil. I mean, they took the British, they told the Americans, you have the technology, you have the money, we don't have it, but we have the oil, it's ours, we know it's there. So what we are saying is, train and develop our people, we will take care of our own resources. Years down the line, Norway is not just exporting the products, they are exporting technology. Everywhere in the world where you are seeing experts in the oil field, they are Norwegians. It took a transformative leader, a leader that saw beyond, that brought a policy that benefits his people. We can do the same in our country. What has gone down to our people after how many years that we've spent mining gold in our country? If a Ghanaian geologist writes a competence report on any gold find and you take it to a stock exchange anywhere in the world, they will chuck in a bin, they will shred it because they know they don't have the skill, the know-how. How long are we going to continue this way? We have so many young people coming through that needs to be employed. We need to create opportunities for them, and that requires us taking radical decisions, being selfless in our approach, and making sure that Ghanaians benefit from our resources.
Let's talk about, of course, because of the limitations of time, I want us to look quickly at health and then also at infrastructure generally, especially roads. What do you feel you're going to bring to bear in these areas? Health has its own challenges. I don't know whether you've been to any of our public hospitals, but it can be pretty disturbing, let me put it that way. Facilities, non-existent in most cases. You have the facilities, you don't have the drugs. Some are covered by the NHIS, others, they are covered, but even getting medication becomes a problem. In some cases, you cannot get even paracetamol in some parts of the country, district level. I mean, the problems are myriad. What are you going to do in health? And maybe you can add infrastructure, including roads, in there.
Okay, so number one, it's misplaced priorities. We're, as a country, more interested in finding a luxurious private jet for our president instead of buying a lift for a Kwalebu teaching hospital where, what do you call it, patients can be lifted up and down in a hospital. These are the challenges we're facing as a country. So let's first address the issues of priority. What are our priorities as a nation? Are we really interested in solving our health issues? Because as you rightly said, even Komfo-Anokye Hospital, which is right at the main hospital in Kuma, Ashanti region, our second biggest region, capital, just see the state of it. No, nothing, basically empty. So let's understand that government cannot do this on their own. Our government can only set up a frame, an enabling environment, and attract foreign investors into it. We sit in a country where people are more comfortable flying to America, England, Switzerland, even Cape Town in South Africa to treat themselves. Look at the kind of money they spent in dollars. Do you think that if there's a serious first-class infrastructure by a private sector driven, we will not have people patronizing? Yes, we will. But where are the enabling environments? If you are putting VAT on power, if you are charging e-levy, if you are putting all these nuisance tax at the head of people, what does businesses get to do? So first of all, create an environment, deliberate environment, to attract people into the health service, give incentives to them. Because if Ghana, as we know, we are known to be very hospitable, people love to be in this country, and it will be a very good location for people to come for education and for their medical treatment. But the private sector can drive this only if government would understand that and have deliberate policies to attract that in, which is not existent as we speak.
Okay, so that's how you address both angles, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's look at this though practically. Look, it has been said that the smaller parties, and even including independent candidates, maybe because getting a third force has been really difficult. And you look at examples like in the USA, even in the UK to some extent, and other countries, it's really difficult for any third party to really penetrate. Some have said the best way for the smaller parties, including independent candidates, to make any inroads is to come together, form some sort of coalesce, basically, to form some sort of coalition, and then have a candidate, standout candidate. Is that a possibility? And is it because everybody wants to show as a presidential candidate that the smaller parties, including you independent guys, cannot do this?
I think you've asked a very, very important question, and you've said it all. We need to come together because we can't do this when we are fragmented. When we are little oceans, little fragments, Ghanaians were not going to take us serious. So we need a coalition, a united front to be able to hit this. But majority of this would depend on our people. I put this question to Ghanaians. If you feel that what you're going through now is the best you want to have, then please continue voting for NDC and MPP, but stop complaining. But if you think that you deserve better, you need to have a better living conditions, then start thinking differently. We need to do something different to get a different results. Einstein said it. It's only an insane person that keeps doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different results. We've gotten into a time in our political history that we've realized that continuing this way would not yield us what we want as a nation. Let's please pause for a minute, have a critical analysis of our situation, and make decisions that would turn this country around. And that starts from every individual out there that hears the sound of my voice, every Ghanaian in every part of this nation, that, hey, if you feel that your conditions are great or are okay, please continue with the current status quo. But if you want us to turn this around for you so that politics would benefit you, as one that is beginning to feel a bit of it, as the developed world have seen it over the years, then please pause for a minute and make a right decision.
I see. It reminds me of the quote by Henry Ford: if you keep doing what you've always done, you keep getting what you've always got. So are you calling here for the other parties to come together? Are you calling? Are you using this platform to call to the other parties? I mean, the CPPs, the PPPs, the LPGs, all these other smaller parties. Absolutely. Are you saying, let's come together and drive the force? And who leads?
Well, I mean, we can go for a Congress and choose a leader. Look, what I'm doing is not because Sam Ankrah wants to be president. I'm doing it because I want my fellow Ghanaians to benefit from this country and let politics change their lifestyle. I mean, I can't fathom why I'm walking around in 2024 and seeing Ghanaians drinking from dirty stream, where the same place where animals also, I mean, it's appalling. Let's bring dignity back to our people. Let's change things around. And I believe that if all of these guys understands this, and this is the reason why they are making the noise they are making, then let's come together collectively with one voice, tell Ghanaians that the status quo has failed us and is the only way out.
Maybe my final bit to you before you give us your final words. You're an investment banker.
Yes.
A lot has happened to the banking space, and now some say the banks are usually going for low-hanging fruit, T-bills, engaging government and crowding out the private sector. If you look at the banking sector cleanup, if you look at the Bank of Ghana and so-called doling out of money to government, which has led to about a 60 billion Ghana cedi debt, and everything that is happening in our banking space, what would you, as an investment banker in power, do in that regard? That would be my final question to you.
First of all, I would cut government borrowing in the local market by 50%, because that's the only way you free money for the private sector to do other things. If government is throwing treasury bills, is floating bonds on a regular basis, and the banks are more comfortable taking from there because it's a safe bet than going to a private person to diagnose their business and fund it because of the risk involved. Government needs to cut their local borrowing by 50% minimum, and then we can phase it out. So that.
How do you do that in the grips of an IMF program?
Well, I mean, we're not borrowing from the local. I mean, the banks themselves have learned in a hard way. The debt restructuring had really taught them lessons that yes, government debt may be safe, but it's not all safe in perpetuity. So create the opportunity for the private sector to have access into the local borrowing. So what I'm saying is, it's possible. It can be done at the IMF. The IMF does not stop Ghana government from borrowing or stop borrowing or borrowing from the local market. I don't see it anywhere in any of the agreements that we've signed with them. So that gives them the opportunity to stop completely from competing with the local market. It frees money for the private sector to do what they have to do. Then again, the central bank, I mean, I don't know what the supervision rule is, but clearly it tells you that for this to happen in our banking sector on 2 consecutive occasions, it tells you that the supervision sector of our central bank is dysfunctional.
Right.
Because you can't sit there for the problem to occur and then react after. You need to be proactive as a compliance person, as somebody that sits there supervising these banks. How were they monitoring the books of these banks? What were the things that they were seeing? And how were they reporting back? And what decisions were being taken? So these are the things that falls back into the central bank. So we need to strengthen the compliance section of our central bank. We need to strengthen their monitoring aspect of it. And that is the only way we can bring sanity into the banking sector as far as that is concerned. Or else we'll be sitting here and all the time we are either closing banks or bringing money to resuscitate them, as has been done over the years.
Final words, Dr. Ankrah.
Well, fellow Ghanaians, it's good once again to speak to you. I just talk to you as your humble servant that the current situation that we're in, the only way this can end is if we can restructure our systems. I know year after year you've been clamoring for change. You've been looking for a leadership that will change your lifestyle. But just 3 months or a month after election, you still go back to the same status quo, nothing has changed. Clearly, it tells you that what we are doing will not solve our problems. Let's look elsewhere. If we want to change, let's do something different. I'm offering you that alternative, and I'm pleading with you to have a critical analysis of exactly what I'm saying and what we intend to do, and support this vision so that we can end the status quo and build our country together for us and the generations behind us. God bless our homeland, Ghana. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sam Ankrah. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, and we wish you the very best on this trajectory. Dr. Sam Ankrah is, of course, an investment banker. He wants to be president. He is with the Alternative for Action movement, AFA. Is that how?
That's right.
AFA.
AFA.
All right. Okay. So this is
December by this time now. AFA.
December by this time now. AFA. Okay. So that's what he says. Well, stick and stay with us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get interactive with you to let you have your say on some of these discussions that we've had. When we return from the break, we'd love to hear from you. Do stay.